Okay, so now let me run you through the texturing for our MG42 machine gun. We'll be using this HDR here, and I've also baked our catalog using the same HDR, so all of our materials will have the same lining conditions. So let me just import my geometry and let me run it until around here. Okay, now it's done importing, and you can see that I've applied the UDEM word to the low res because it's a single texture map, but I've imported it in parts so it's easier to texture, or rather easier to address here in the select words. And down here we have our high res model, which is just the same model but merged. So our high res is just a single piece of geometry. And let me now start the baking. Oh, and I've made a new word for the baking, so it's this one, bake-cage, which allows us to set the cage distance for the bake. So I've set it here at 1.0 and the default it's around 0.001, but I'm still getting a little few artifacts around here in the stock, so I'll have to twirl it around some more in the future. But for now, let's just start our baking, and I'll come back when it's done baking. And it's done baking, so let me show you the results here. I have around 90 maps, and if I come here, you can see that I've added a new map type. It's the edge map, so you can call it by using the mask-edge, and it's just the Blender default bevel shader. So let me just delete my high res now. So let me just comment here until here, and let me delete my high res. Okay, now I have only my low res, and I've also made a palette using the same image, and you will find it in the palette folder named slipweight.neotex. So I've loaded, and next up comes our base mat. So it's a word that defines a material. So if I were to, let me show you here, if I were to select everything and then initialize the material, you can see that it's just this purple material, which distracts too much the eye. So the base mat word, what does is just generate a neutral gray, a 50% gray, and apply it as a default material, so we can just start texturing our machine gun in a much more non-eye damaging way. I've also changed the ambient occlusion. By default it was at 1 meter here, and you can see that it's not very strong, so I've set it to around 5, and the intensity I've set it to around 2.25. So when we are using the ambient occlusion word, it will use the viewport ambient occlusion to calculate as well, and we'll have a much more nicer ambient occlusion. So let's start with a show all, and let's move on to the first material. Okay, so our first material is just the material for the case and the cover. So if I were to come here and show you the material, it's this one here. So we'll be doing a weathered blackish material. So let's start. Let me show you the base. It's this iron 10 at 0.3 scale. So if I were to run it here, we can see that it looks like this. So if I come here and to the catalog and go to the iron and search for it, you can see it's iron 10, so around here, iron 10, and you can see it looks very similar, and this is actually very helpful since we can tell what the material will look in the proper environment. So it looks pretty similar. I've also gone ahead and modified the diffuse channel. So if I run it until here, you can see it's black, but it's using the color. So if you remember, this is the palette matching word. So if I run it until there, you can see that it's not black, but rather this gray here. So it found this one of the darkest shades is just this one here. So let's just move on. So now we have a 30% mix and a 10% dark. So let's see how that looks. And now we can see that our diffuse is now much more darker. So compared to where it was at the beginning, let's see. Yeah, it's a little bit darker now. So if I preview the material now, let's see how it looks. And it's a nice dark material which blends around here. Now let's go on to the next material. It's a grunge 15 matte at 0.2 scale. So let's see how that one looks without any color correction. And it's very nice. So let me show you here in the catalog the grunges. Let's see, grunge 15, 14 and 15, and again it's very similar, and it's a very nice looking grungy material. So okay, now let's move on. I've also set the normal strength to 1.0, and it reduced it a little bit, mainly because the default normal strength is 1.5. So I just wanted to make it just a little less exaggerated. And now let me see the diffuse here. Let's see what my diffuse looks like. And it's very light. So I've desaturated and made it darker. So let's see how that looks. Yeah, much darker. And if I see the whole material, and it's a pretty black material here. Okay, so now let me show you the mask here. I have a mask cavity at 0.25 in high contrast, so let me see how the mask looks. And it's pretty much the edge mask, although this one also has black in it. So I think the main difference is that the new edge mask word has just the edges and not the cavities in here. So for example, here we can see we have some sort of shadow as well. So let's see how does this look. Okay, so I've mixed the mask with itself, so a double mask just to accentuate the edges and the dark parts a little bit. Although I think I could have just used the darker and then multiply it, but down here I have a similar example, so we'll wait until that one. Or I think I can just remove this one. Let's see how it looks. No, I like the other one. It's a little bit darker, so let me just Ctrl Z until it's done. Okay, now here I have two demasks. So the first one is copper 07, and I think this is a good chance to show you how does it look in the catalog. So it's copper 07, so let's see, copper 07, it's this one, and we can see that it looks like this. So when you are choosing a mask, you can guide yourself using this picture down here. And well, it's not quite similar, mainly because my contrast is at low con. So if I were to put it at high con, let's see how it looks. And much more similar to this one here. But I like it how it looked with the low con. So let's see. I'm also mixing it over with the previous mask. So now we have our cavity mask overlaid with the copper D mask. So down here I have another copper D mask, but this time is the 08, and it has the middle contrast. So the 08, you can see it's this one. It looks like a big, very big stain. So let's see how that one looks. And you can see it's a sort of like a stain material. So I've mixed it with the screen mode. So let's see how that looks. And it looks okay. It screened it over the previous mask. And then I inverted it because the order of the materials was wrong. So let me show you how it looks without the inversion. So let me just pause it until here. and you can see that it looks fine, but the edges are dark, so from far away it gives it a little bit of a cartoony look, sort of an outline. So I want the reverse, so invert, and let me run until here, and now we have the reverse. Now the edges are a little bit clear, so it doesn't have that cartoony look, at least not that much, and it looks kind of black and very weathered material. So now let's move on to the next material. So I will be just taking this section here and cutting it and pasting it up here. So, and this one, it may seem like a big material, but it's just 3 materials mixed in. So let me just pause it until the init mat and see which part we are texturing. So we are texturing the base of the handle, the lower base of the gun, and the main body, along with the nozzle. So let's see, the first material is this paint 03. So let me just see a preview, and it's a red paint, and if we find it here in our catalog, we can see that 03, paint 03, it's this one. It looks like a brushed paint, so that will be a very nice painted look, but it's red, not the military green. So let me just go ahead and run a desaturate on the diffuse channel, and we can see these are desaturated diffuse, and I have a green -5 color. That means I am matching with the palette. So let's see how it looks, and it looks like a green that could come from around here. And if I multiply it and make it a little bit darker, let's see how it looks. And now it's a very nice military green. So let's see how the whole material looks, and it's a very nice painted material. It also has a nice specular, as you can see. So despite this being just 1K maps, because I need to save a little bit on video RAM for the recording, despite this being 1K, it looks pretty darn nice. So let's see our next material for the body of the gun. So let's see, it's an iron 09 matte at 0.4 in scale. So let's see how that one look. And oh, it's a very rough iron, so let me see how it looks here in the catalog. Iron, and it's iron 09. So let me just go to the bottom here, and yeah, it's a very nice rough iron. So I'm guessing I will be using this to the bottom of the gun. So let's continue here. Let me see my mask, and I don't really remember what I'm doing since I did this a few days ago, so this is kind of a refresher for me as well. And now I am using my mask cavity at 0.5 with mid contrast, which is basically just an edge map. Yeah, it's pretty much an edge map. So let's see, I wonder how mask edge looks at 0.5 mid contrast. Let's see how that one looks, and it's very similar, but it's lacking some edges. So yeah, it's a bit more delicate. So let's see again our cavity. Yeah, the cavity is more rougher, especially around here in the sides. Yep. So let's see the next mask, the one that will bring a little bit more variety to our mask here, and it's this grunge 15 again, with a 0.1 in scale and 0.5 high con. So let's see how that one looks, and it's very nice. So this will be the scratches on the paint. So let's see how it looks, mix it over, and okay, now we have the same material, the same cavity mask, but now it's a little bit chipped, because I mixed the high contrast mask, the grunge one. So it's just to break the uniformity of the lines. And if I see the material mixed, let's see how it looks. And now we can see that it's just the edge masking. So we have our paint, and then underneath we reveal the iron. So far so nice, or rather so far so good. So let's move on. I've also overlaid another material, so another paint layer. So this one will break the uniformity of this green one here. So we can see it looks very uniform, but I think in these conditions we would have dirt and some water, so maybe splashes, and this would mix and generate some dirty water that would dry. So I did just that with this paint 00 matte at 0.5 in scale. So let me show it here, and it's a blue. Maybe I should have removed the saturation for the paints, but no problem. I can just come here and mix over a green -3 color. So let's see, and it's a lighter green. And let me desaturate it here. Let's see how it looks. And now it looks a bit dirty, like the green would be covered in dirty water or dusty water. So now let's see the main part, which is just the mask for this material here. So I have a paint 06 D mask. Let me preview it, see how it looks. And right off the bat I can see that it's too repeating, so I did well adding the 0.1s in scale. And now we start to see that it's just splatters. So let's see how this one looks in the catalog here. And it's a paint number 6. So let's see. Oh yeah, it's a scratched paint. Although we won't be revealing the under, we will be rather adding the top. So I made the mid con here. Let's see how that looks. And now it has more contrast. And I did a neat little trick here. If you read the manual, you know the word duplicates the top of the stack. So I just duplicate this one here and add another scale and a different position. So if I do this, we get something that looks like this, so more noisy. But now here comes the magic. I'm mixing the two using a multiply. So now I not only have my splashes here, but I also break the splashes by itself. So let's see how the material looks, and it's much more nicer. We can see that we have a new layer of paint, probably scratches, or it also could be dusty water or particles of dust that have dried up. So overall it looks very nice, at least that seems to me. So let me just go on with the next material, and again I will be just cutting and pasting on top here. So let me move it on top of here and paste it, and let me show you, it's this cylinder here. So let me show you the purple color so we know what we're texturing. And now if you have noticed it, this is a unintended effect, but when we call base matte and then we move our first material to the top, or rather the material we're texturing on the top, we instantaneously get a sort of a solo mode, so we don't have to worry about the other materials calculating, or just we want to see the material we are doing. So this one is a rather simple. is just an iron 01 matte at 0.3 in scale. So let's see how that one looks. Let's see. And it's just a dirty iron. But now comes a nice little trick here. This sand matte is this word I've defined here. So it's just a grunge matte at 0.2 in scale. So let's see how that one looks. And you can see it's just dirt, but I've also color corrected it a bit. So let's see how the color correction looks. And now you can see that compared to the default diffuse map, it's a little bit more saturated, so it's a dust material. And I've also added the not metal to the metal channel because I'm doing dust, or rather sand, and sand is not very metallic. So we have this material here. Now let's see the mask. It's a grunge 9D mask at 0.3 in scale. So let's see how that one looks. And it's a nice diffuse mask. It's very great. And I've also added a very low count, so I've made it just a little bit darker. You saw the change here. And I've added a mask cavity, but you may notice that the cavity pretty much doesn't do anything at all. But this sand matte word will come to play a key role in our texture, because in the end we'll be using this sand matte to unify the whole texture using the continue word down here. So let me see how this material looks here, and I don't have any other debug. Yep. So let me just run it and wait and see. And it ran all the way through, so no, I just wanted to see this material here. So it's a nice dirty bar, the cylinder, although I'd like to have the cylinder streaks in the horizontal, but I'm not sure how logical that would be. So let's continue anyways. Now let's do this material here. So again, let me just cut it and just paste it up here. And by the way, this is the way I did the initial texturing. I just typed stuff and then typed stuff on top, so as to continue or not to have to calculate the whole thing, even though it's just a few seconds, around 2 or 3 seconds. But when you are iterating, that time really takes you out of the loop. So let me show you what we are texturing here. And let me have our ugly color here. Now you can see that we are texturing the bolts, the trigger, the reload handle, the reload safety, and our little Y hole here. I don't know the name, I just name it Y hole because it sort of looks like a Y. But let's see what we are doing to it. We have still 08 matte and just a little bit lighter, so let's see how it looks. And still 08 is kinda matte. Let's see how it looks in the catalog. Still, and let's wait. 08, 06, 08, and it's a matte steel material, probably a little bit oxidized, so just perfect for this part here. So let's see what else we have. We have a copper at 0.5 in scale, but copper is copper color, and I don't think they use copper for this since it's too soft. So what I did here was just desaturate it a bit and darken it just a little bit. So let me show you the diffuse channel. This is the end of the color correction and this is the beginning, and there's quite a lot of difference here. So let's see what's the result. And it's a very dark, almost dirty color, so very rough. which fits right in with this, since these probably were molded. So, and as you say, and as you know, molds are very rough, at least when they are done like this in mass quantity productions. So let's continue here. Now let's see our mask. Is a mask cavity at 0.1 high contrast. So let's see how that one looks. And it's almost non-existent except for some of these parts in here. And I've also added a mask curvature. So if you remember, this was the noisy mask derived from the normal map. So we use the compression artifacts to generate some artificial detail. So let's see. And I've also inverted it. Yep, very nice. So let's see how the whole material looks. And now we can see that it's the rough parts with some very shine parts. And I think this is very appropriate for the trigger, since your finger action will eventually make it very nice and shiny. So overall I like it. Let's see how it looks in here. Yeah, it looks okay, although I'm seeing these things here are probably some artifacts from the normal map, but I think these serve the purpose to add some random detail. So overall it's very nice. So let's continue on to the next material. So let me just cut, or rather come down here and copy paste it. Oh, and without knowing it, we're already pretty much at the end. So that was kind of fast. So now here I have my wood, and this wood should go at the very end, because I'm going to show you here. I am overriding a material. So down here I had the handle material, but if you see here in the Explorer, we can see that we have a wood handle. So this handle here will match this handle here, but this one I set it to wood, so it's this one here, so a wooden handle, and also the stock, which is traditionally wooden. So this one goes at the very end, because we'll be overriding this material, or at least it should go after this material, the underplate one. So let's see how our wood looks. I have wood 31 matte at 0.3 in scale. So let's see how the woods look. And I have a ton of wood materials here. I think along with the stone materials and the rock materials, it's the most materials variation we have. So let me search it. Let's see, it's wood 31. So it's this one here, and it's a very desaturated wood. It's not very conspicuous. Let's see, yeah, it's a normal wood. So let's see how that one looks at 0.3 in scale, and it's a very nice, but it's too clear. And here you can see that the artifacts, the baking artifacts. So I need to work around in Blender to either make a better baking system, or rather write one from scratch. Either one, I'll be giving it for free with the download, but it might take a little bit of time, since this is not a very trivial matter. So now let's see how our diffuse channel looks with an orange -4, and now you can see it's starting to look quite good. It's very deep and saturated color, which I think looks very nice, and I've made it just at that % darker. And now you can see that despite this being a brown, we start to match this background here. So let's see how the material looks. And it's a dark material, dark wood, very nice looking. So let's see, the next one is wood 57. So let's see, wood 57 is, man, I have a lot of wood. Is this wood? So I think this came from a burnt wood or a petrified wood picture. So it's very nice and rough. So let's see what I did in here. Let's see first how the material looks. And you can see it's very nice. It has the cracked look to it. So let me see the color correction. So now we know that the material is pretty gray, so it's not worth showing it. But now you can see that it's much darker. So I've also used that same one, but with a less scale as a mask. So let me show the mask to you. Now you can see these streaks in here, especially in here. So let's see how the contrast looks. And super nice. Yeah, I really like it. Very nice. So let's go here and see how our material looks. And it's a, yep, I like it. Very nice. You can see that the masking, it masks the lighter color with the darker one, and it has very nice high frequency detail despite this being a 1K map, so it looks super nice. So let's go until the final stage here. So let me just paste my wood down here and show you how the model looks without the continue. So I don't think I have any other debugger, so let me just run it until here and wait a few seconds, and it's done. And now you can see that our gun looks okay, looks nice. Still, this painted material here, it's a bit repetitive. So one thing we can do to alleviate this and to merge all of our materials together, because if we are in an environment, you will know that we get dust, and the same dust will go in all materials. So instead of changing every single material to have a dust, let's just use a continue down here. I've added the mask ambient occlusion here, so if I run it, and it will take a little bit, and it's done, you can see we have a noisy ambient occlusion that also takes into account the blender ambient occlusion inside. So if I turn it on and off, you can see, and I'm going to multiply it with my sand matte word. So let's see how this one looks, and now you start to see that looks very nice. It's a very nice looking mask. But that's not all, there's more. I've also added a ramp because the mix mold doesn't have one ramp, so I've added a ramp and then the contrast words. So let's see how that one looks. And now you can see that we have the proper contrast for our dust final material. So I just mix it, and let's see how it looks. So it's calculating, and now we have our final material. Although you may think that this is a little bit too much, but it's okay. You can always make it less, but the important thing here is that we have one material that just unifies our gun. So if we look at like this, we can see that we are perfectly matched to our environment, and it's not so bad looking. So all in all, this took me around an hour to make, but I had to go through a lot of trial and error. But overall, it's a very nice result, especially when looking like this. We see that even our specular is matched to the scene. So maybe the diffuse has a little bit to do with that. And this is pretty much it. I will be including this file in the tutorial section, so you can just download it and check it for yourself. Also, all of these materials can just be made into words like this sand mat and be reused, so you can start building your own texture library akin to smart materials. So that's pretty much it, and I'll see you in any future tutorial.